How did one bright orange Dodge Charger become the most famous TV car of all time? The General Lee wasn't just a muscle car, it was a stunt machine, a cultural flashpoint, and the secret star of the Dukes of Hazzard. For years, it flew over barns, outran the law, and crashed its way into television history. But behind the fame and nostalgia, there are stories most fans have never heard. From fake paint colors to wrecked cars by the hundreds, from fan mail addressed to a car, to the controversies that nearly erased it from reruns, this is the untold truth of the General Lee. Today, we're breaking down 10 interesting facts you probably didn't know about the world's most legendary TV muscle car. Most people think the General Lee was just a flashy TV car, but its roots go much deeper, back to real moonshine runners in the American South. The Dukes of Hazzard wasn't dreamed up out of thin air. It was inspired by the 1975 film Moonrunners, which itself was based on the life of Jerry Rushing, a real bootlegger who ran illegal whiskey during the 1950s and 60s. His weapon of choice, a souped-up 1958 Chrysler 300D that could hit 140 miles per hour. He even nicknamed the car Traveler after Confederate General Robert E. Lee's favorite horse. That outlaw spirit carried over directly into the Dukes of Hazzard. Bo and Luke Duke were modern-day versions of those bootleggers, always outrunning the law in their Charger. And when producers were looking for the perfect car to bring that story to life, they chose the Dodge Charger not just for its muscle and looks, but because it represented the rebel tradition that gave birth to stock car racing and eventually NASCAR. So the General Lee wasn't just a car written into a script. It was a nod to America's moonshine past, a wink at outlaw culture, and a symbol of speed and rebellion from the very beginning. But the paint job they picked for the General Lee wasn't what fans think. And the truth behind that color choice might surprise you. Ask almost anyone what color the General Lee was and they'll tell you, Hemi orange. It makes sense. Dodge had a factory paint called that, and it fits the Charger's muscle car image. But here's the twist. The General Lee was almost never Hemi orange. In reality, the paint varied. Early cars used Chrysler's Hemi orange, but on camera, it looked brown under studio lights. So the crew experimented. Many General Lees ended up sprayed in a Corvette color called Flame Red, while others were finished with whatever shade of bright orange paint they could get their hands on. In fact, when restorers scanned the paint on one original car, they found it wasn't even a factory automotive color. It was TNT Express Orange, the same color used on delivery trucks. That bright glow became the car's trademark, but it wasn't about tradition, it was about what popped best on TV. The orange made the Charger stand out in every frame, whether it was leaping over police cruisers or sliding through a dirt road chase. So the General Lee's most recognizable feature, its blazing paint job, wasn't pure Dodge heritage. It was Hollywood illusion, designed to make a good car look unforgettable. And speaking of myths, here's one that might shock Moper fans. Despite what you've heard, not a single General Lee ever packed the legendary 426 Hemi. When you think of a '69 Dodge Charger, one engine instantly comes to mind, the legendary 426 Hemi. It's the holy grail of Moper power, the kind of engine you'd expect under the hood of TV's most famous muscle car. But here's the surprising truth, not a single General Lee used in the show ever had one. Instead, the production team used a mix of engines depending on what the car was needed for. The lighter stunt cars often came with small 318 V8 South because they handled better in two-wheel driving scenes. Cars used for close-ups or everyday driving usually had the mid-range 383s, and for those massive high-flying jumps, the stunt drivers demanded 440 Magnums with their extra torque and horsepower to make the leaps possible. Even the very first car, known as Lee 1, had a 440 under the hood. But the iconic sound of the Charger ripping through gears, that was Hollywood trickery. Almost all the General Lees ran automatic transmissions, yet the sound editors dubbed in the roar of manual gear shifts to make the action feel more exciting. So while fans love to imagine the Duke boys tearing through Hazzard County with Hemi muscle, the truth is the General Lee's power was pure practicality, chosen to survive stunts, not win drag races. But here's the kicker, no matter the engine, the crew still destroyed hundreds of these cars. And the number of Chargers wrecked during filming might leave you stunned. If you've ever wondered how the General Lee seemed to defy gravity week after week, here's the answer. Warner Brothers went through Chargers like they were disposable. In fact, during the show's 7-season run, the crew destroyed an average of 2 to 3 cars per episode. By the time the Dukes of Hazzard ended, somewhere between 250 and 325 Dodge Chargers had been sacrificed in the name of entertainment. Every epic jump that thrilled audiences usually meant another totaled car. Frames bent, suspension snapped, and many Chargers simply never drove again after their big moment of TV glory. The destruction got so extreme that the production team had to get creative. They disguised 1968 Chargers as 69s with new grills and taillights. When those ran short, they even painted AMC ambassadors orange and used tricky camera angles to fool viewers. In later seasons, when the Charger shortage hit critical levels, some stunts were filmed with radio-controlled miniatures just to keep the illusion alive. The General Lee looked indestructible on screen, but behind the scenes, it was a car graveyard. Every soaring leap came with a price, and often, that price was another Charger lost forever. And speaking of leaps, the most famous jump in the opening credits nearly ended in disaster. To pull it off, the crew had to load the trunk with cement, and what happened next became TV history. The most iconic moment in the Dukes of Hazzard isn't a fight, a chase, or even a one-liner. It's the sight of the General Lee soaring through the air in the opening credits. But what most fans don't know is that this legendary stunt almost didn't work. In early test jumps, the Charger kept nosediving, its heavy front end slamming down first, destroying the car before it even landed. The solution? The stunt crew loaded the trunk with several hundred pounds of cement to shift the weight balance. That's right, the car you see flying 80 feet across the screen was carrying a slab of concrete just to keep its nose up. The jump itself hit a peak height of 16 feet and looked incredible on camera, but it came at a price. The car, known as Lee 1, was completely totaled on impact. It limped away, never to be driven again. But the footage was so spectacular that producers reused it in the credits for every episode, making sure Lee 1's sacrifice was immortalized in TV history. That stunt didn't just set the tone for the show, it became the very image of the General Lee. Every leap that followed was chasing the magic of that first flight. But while the car was smashing records on screen, something unbelievable was happening off-screen. The General Lee was getting fan mail like it was a Hollywood celebrity. It's one thing for actors to get fan letters, but the Dukes of Hazzard had something even stranger. People wrote directly to the car. During the height of the show's popularity, Warner Brothers Studios received over 35,000 letters a month, and a surprising number were addressed not to John Schneider, Tom Wopat, or Catherine Bach, but to the General Lee. That's how much of a star the Charger had become. Viewers didn't just see it as a prop, they treated it like a character with its own personality. The welded doors, the orange paint, the Dixie horn. It all combined to give the General Lee a larger-than-life presence that captured imaginations around the world. For the human cast, it was a mixed blessing. On one hand, the show was a massive hit, but on the other, it had to sting knowing a car was stealing some of their spotlight. Few vehicles in TV history have reached that level of fame. Kid from Knight Rider comes close, but even that Pontiac never got fan mail on this scale. The General Lee wasn't just a vehicle, it was a cultural icon that fans loved like a real person. But not everyone saw the car as harmless fun. The roof design would spark one of the biggest controversies in TV car history, a debate that still hasn't gone away. For decades, the General Lee was celebrated without question. But in more recent years, its most recognizable feature, the Confederate flag painted on its roof, has turned into one of its biggest controversies. When the Dukes of Hazzard first aired, the flag was meant to symbolize rebellion and Southern pride. It tied back to Jerry Rushing's bootlegger roots and his Chrysler Traveler, named after General Robert E. Lee's horse. At the time, it was simply part of the car's outlaw image. But as cultural views shifted, the flag came to be associated with racism, slavery, and hate groups. Suddenly, what had once been seen as a fun TV symbol became a lightning rod for criticism. Pro golfer Bubba Watson, who bought Lee 1 in 2012, faced so much backlash that he repainted his General Lee with an American flag on the roof. Even reruns of the show have been edited or pulled from syndication because of the flag. It's one of the clearest examples of how nostalgia and history can clash. To some, the General Lee remains a piece of childhood fun. To others, the roof design makes it impossible to celebrate. And that tension has forever changed how the car is remembered. But while the debates raged, another shocking truth was quietly emerging. Out of the hundreds of Chargers used on set, fewer than 20 real General Lees are still around today. During its TV run, the Dukes of Hazzard chewed through Dodge Chargers like no other production in history. With over 300 cars sacrificed for jumps, crashes, and stunts, you'd expect a graveyard of wrecked General Lees, and that's exactly what happened. Most of the cars were totaled beyond repair. Some were stripped for parts, while others were patched up just enough to survive another scene before being destroyed again. By the time filming wrapped in 1985, the vast majority of the Chargers were gone for good. Today, experts estimate that fewer than 20 authentic General Lees used in the shows still exist. Some sit in private collections, while a few are displayed in museums like the Volo Auto Museum in Illinois and the Hollywood Star Cars Museum in Tennessee. Others have been meticulously restored by enthusiasts who track down battered shells from scrapyards and junk lots. Meanwhile, replicas number in the thousands. Fans around the world have built their own versions, keeping the car alive long after the cameras stopped rolling. But only those surviving originals hold real collector value, often commanding hundreds of thousands of dollars at auction. The General Lee might look invincible on screen, but in reality, it was fragile and only a handful lived to tell the tale. And here's another twist. Not every General Lee you saw on screen was even a Dodge Charger at all. Here's a secret most fans never realized. Not every General Lee you saw on screen was actually a Dodge Charger. Because the production team was destroying cars at such a frantic pace, they quickly ran into a problem. There just weren't enough 69 Chargers left to buy. So they started getting creative. Many 68 Chargers were modified to look like 69s, with updated grills, taillights, and body tweaks. In desperate times, they even dressed up ANC ambassadors in orange paint, slapped the 01 on the doors, and used clever camera angles to pass them off as the real deal. By the later seasons, things got even more unusual. Radio-controlled miniature models were filmed for certain stunts, cutting down on the need to wreck more full-sized cars. If you watch closely, some of those late series jumps don't look quite right because they weren't real cars at all. For fans, it's a reminder of how much Hollywood smoke and mirrors went into keeping the General Lee alive on screen. Sometimes you weren't cheering for a Charger at all, you were cheering for a stand-in wearing a bright orange disguise. And while the car's identity was sometimes a trick, its legacy as a collector's dream is very real. Because today, owning an original General Lee can cost a fortune. Decades after the Dukes of Hazzard went off the air, the General Lee remains one of the most valuable and sought-after TV cars in history. Collectors will pay staggering amounts to own a piece of that orange-painted legend. In 2012, pro golfer Bubba Watson famously bought Lee 1, the very first General Lee used in the opening credits jump, for about $121,000 at auction. Since then, restored originals have regularly gone for hundreds of thousands of dollars, depending on their condition and history. One restored car even drew bids close to $10 million in a high-profile auction, though the sale ultimately fell through when the winning bidder couldn't pay up. Even replicas, which number in the thousands, fetch impressive prices. At car shows, conventions, and collector events, fans still line up just to snap a photo with the General Lee. Nearly 40 years after its last TV appearance, the Charger hasn't lost its star power. If anything, its mix of nostalgia and controversy makes it more famous than ever. The value isn't just in steel and paint. It's in the memories of an era when a TV car could fly, crash, and somehow drive off again week after week. The Generally wasn't just a car, it was a stunt machine, a pop culture icon, and one of the most controversial symbols in TV history. It was born from moonshine legends, painted in colors that weren't quite what fans believed, and powered by engines chosen for survival more than speed. It leapt across barns, smashed through fences, and sacrificed hundreds of Chargers to become the star of the Dukes of Hazzard. For some, it's pure nostalgia, a reminder of Friday nights glued to the TV, cheering as the Duke boys escape the law once again. For others, the car's roof and name sparked debates that show just how much symbols can change over time. Love it or hate it, one thing is undeniable: the Generally is still one of the most famous cars in the world, and maybe that's the real legacy. It's more than a Dodge Charger. It's a story about rebellion, spectacle, controversy, and how a simple TV prop became larger than life. So what do you think? Is the Generally a timeless piece of TV history, or a relic best left in the past? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and if you learned something new today, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories behind the world's most legendary cars.